Welcome, everybody, to the LIPSEY'S Aim Higher podcast. Across from me, Jason Kloster, and he did so good the first time we had to bring him back. Dale Luke.
Yeah, I don't know why they keep bringing me back.
I know. What's going on, guys? How we doing?
Good.
Doing
Good,
well.
man.
Doing well.
So we're getting into a hot topic today. Jason's been getting a pretty good flurry of questions. But that's actually nothing new, I guess, regarding our topic, which we're going to get into kind of specifically LIPSEY'S exclusive single-action revolvers.
It seems like it's the one I get the most questions about all the time.
Right. That's been going on a while. Not necessarily something new.
Since 2009 when we did the original Flat Top 44 special.
So we got questions coming in. Of course, we just kind of wanted to dive into the topic and talk a little bit about the history, the present, maybe a little bit of the future. We've got hunting season coming up, maybe some fun things to take out outdoors this fall. So, we can get into it a little bit. So let's kick it off, man. What are some things you've been asked, or what are people kind of clamoring for these days? I know, again, it's kind of been the same old story of a bit of a drought as far as, new exclusives or just even, regular production. But what kind of things are you hearing?
Yeah, single-action revolvers, for the most part, have been pretty much non-existent the last year, whether it's exclusives or just cataloged items from Ruger and the other manufacturers too. We do some stuff with BFR and a couple of other ones. It's just they're more complicated to assemble, take more skilled labor,
right?
And it's just they're just slower to produce. So
the masses tend to clamor for the semi-autos.
Correct.
That's in a time of limited production or distressed production, I should say. I mean, they're forced to focus on what's going to move.
Well, and a lot of the revolver cartridges too have been really hampered by the ammo shortage. Good luck trying to find 41 Magnum or 327 or a lot of the other kind of more obscure stuff. So if you're not a hand loader and you didn't have a lot of components stockpiled, you probably haven't been shooting your single actions a whole lot the last year.
Right. How about some terminology? And we can kind of kick this off. You guys can break this down a little bit too for the layman. I know when I first started here, terms like Bisley, terms like flat top, things like that. What are some of those differences? And we can just spend a minute on that, kind of getting everybody up to speed. I know a lot of the people that listen to this are familiar, but maybe some new people or maybe people interested in getting into revolver shooting. What are some of those differences? What do they do? How do they affect the overall firearm?
Well, the original single action centerfire Blackhawks that Ruger came out with in the 1950s had flat top frames, and so the frame on a Colt single action Army, it's a fixed sight. Right. So it kind of has a radius top strap. It's got a groove cut into it, and they're just very crude rudimentary sights. Ruger, when they did the original Blackhawk, they put a flat top frame and an adjustable rear sight. And so those original guns, the top strap was flat all the way across the top. And then there was a recess where the sight sat down into it. When they came out and they did the Super Blackhawk, they actually raised the ears slightly around that rear sight. So when you cranked that rear sight up, it was still protected. Mm-hmm. And so the original ones that did not have the raised ears are referred to as flat tops. When they came back out in 2005, I think it was, or 2003, whenever it was, when they came back out with the flat top anniversary 357, they went back to that original flat top, not non-raised ear top strap. So a lot of our exclusives are based off of that flat top design. It's really just a cosmetic thing more than anything.
I was going to say, what do you, Dale? You've shot quite a few of our revolvers. So, what is there a preference? Is there? What do you think?
It's more cosmetics. To have that little micro recessed rear sight, sitting low in the top strap and everything. I just think it's more cosmetics than anything else. But it also kind of thins it out a little bit, and it does reduce a little bit of weight.
Yeah, and it's minuscule. Again, the raised ears do help protect the rear sight if your rear sight is cranked up pretty high. Mm-hmm. So it's really probably more functional, but the flip side is if you tailor your loads correctly or your front sight, most of the time your rear sight's cranked down pretty low anyways. So it's not really a big issue. So I like the looks of the flat top. I think it just looks probably a little cleaner.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's really more cosmetics than anything.
So we get into like grips like Bisley. Now that's a Ruger thing, really.
Well, it actually started with
it's a
Colt.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow. All right.
Colt, back in the late 1800s, there was a lot of competition shooting with obviously single actions. There was no semi-autos really back then when they were doing this. And the range was in Bisley, England. And so Colt made the tradition of the day was to shoot with one hand, and there wasn't a lot of two-hand shooting.
Right.
And the style that they used, that the Bisley grip frame was designed around those competitions. And so where it was a more pronounced, one-hand grip, the lower hammer spur, so it was easier to cock with your thumb in that shooting position.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were purpose-built around competition, basically, at that time.
That's interesting. I learned something new every day.
Yeah.
It's so synonymous with a lot of our Ruger exclusives because we use it a lot.
Right.
I know you're a big fan of that.
Well, and what happened was the Bisley grip frame kind of just languished along and really didn't have any significance until Elmer Keith designed his number 5. And his number 5 revolver, which is actually about to go back up on auction again.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it was auctioned off, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And
what's that go for?
I think it went for around 80,000 that last time. I
So
think
you want to have a pool?
Yeah.
We could just share custody and just pass
I'm
it around.
saving up for it. Yeah. But it's about to actually go back for auction again. Who knows what it'll go for? But
Wow.
but he worked with Harold Croft on designing the ultimate single action revolver, and it ended up being a Colt single action Army flat top style frame. And then he combined the Bisley grip frame and this Colt single action Army standard grip frame, and they combined it into one. And it's known as the number 5 grip frame. And so it's kind of a modified Bisley. It's not
a hybrid almost.
It's a hybrid. The original Colt Bisley grip frame is different from the Ruger Bisley grip frame. So in 83, 84, 85-ish range, Bill Ruger decided to come out with a Bisley model. And his grip frame was more based off the Elmer Keith number 5. It's not exact, but it resembles it closer than it does the original Colt. And he came out with that in a 7.5-inch large frame, 44 Magnum, 45 Colt, 357.
And 22.
They did do it in a single 6 a little bit later, in both 22 and in 32. But where it really took off was not for competition or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was the guys like John Linebaugh who were building the big 500s and the 475s that determined that this grip frame was a lot more conducive to handling the heavy recoil than the standard, hog leg style plow grip, that you hear. So it became the default. If you want to shoot heavy recoiling single action revolver, the Bisley was kind of the default, and that's where that really took off and became more of a large bore hunting handgun grip frame than a target grip frame. But it's also translated into a lot of guys like it in their smaller kicking calibers as well, because I like it better. It's more comfortable. It's a little bit longer, so you get a little bit better grip on it. And once you get used to shooting it, I think it's a little more comfortable than the standard grip frames.
And I find the standard grip frames, it has an angle to it. Those guns, especially when you start shooting some of the heavier stuff, they're designed more to roll in your hand. And you'll get a little muzzle flip on them where the Bisley has a sharper drop on it, and you can really bear down on it and get a full grip and not have that pinky kind of just hanging off the bottom side of it.
Yeah.
I was
like shooting like the old original Super Blackhawks with the Dragoon style grip frame. Those, I never liked shooting those guns. For some people, they do great. I didn't like them. The Bisley completely changed over. I remember my first large bore handgun was a Ruger Blackhawk 4 5/8 inch 41 Magnum. I remember saving my money. I bought it when I was 16. I couldn't hit anything with that gun, and I was just learning. I was just making noise at the time, but it had a decent amount of recoil. It kicked. And the reason why I got the 41 Magnum is because back then they didn't make a 44 Magnum in the shorter barrel. They only made the 7.5-inch guns, and I wanted something small and light. And so I went with put Packmeyer grips on it and everything, and that helped some. And then one day I shot a Bisley model, and it was like the light bulb went off. I said, "Oh man, this is way better." And ever since then, anything had any kind of significant recoil, I've just automatically default to the Bisleys.
Yeah, every big bore revolver I've had, I've converted to a Bisley grip frame. I've had a Bisley grip frame fitted to it.
Really?
Yeah, I've taken the standard Blackhawks adjustable sights, regardless if they were built in the late 70s, to modern production guns. I've taken that aluminum grip frame off of the Blackhawks because they were blue, and added a steel Bisley grip frame. And that's another advantage, is because the Bisleys are always steel grip frames, where a standard Blackhawk is the aluminum.
Interesting.
Yeah, basically it's a grip frame, a trigger, and a hammer, or the three
Right.
parts that you have to change out.
Right. You've always had an affinity for these single actions. I mean, it's and that's sort of become the DNA of a lot of our exclusives.
Yeah,
you know, and
that's what I grew up shooting. My dad, I mean, he didn't even really have any semi-automatic pistols until I got into my teens. He always shot single actions. Ruger single sixes and Super Blackhawks, single action armies.
Yeah.
So that's just what I was exposed to,
Right.
and just learned to shoot them and actually learned to do a lot with them.
What's some other traits? Where else do we find your fingerprints on our exclusives? You know, I know flat tops are popular. The Bisley grips are popular. What's something else you like to kind of inject?
Probably the like the GP100 stuff. I've always been a big.
So you got like the half lugs always is kind of a big deal. So
you can see my influence is definitely from the 70s era of design.
Cop guns.
Well, it was because, again, my dad had all the gun magazines from the 1970s and 80s that when I was a kid in the early 80s, was reading those, and it's just kind of stuff. I still have a bunch of those, and I still flip through them occasionally. Yeah. And so I got hooked in on half lug, Model 19s and 27s from Smith and all this kind of stuff. And so when it really wasn't until the 80s that the full lug guns started really coming out.
Right.
And I don't know, just for whatever reason, they didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Plus, I carry these guns a lot in the woods, and if I can knock a couple ounces off here or there, to me, it's worth the deal. So.
How about you? When did you start? What did you start with? Kind of this. We're all about the same age, give or take. So
what's funny? Jason and I, we've worked together 23 years, and we've hunted together
22 years.
22 years of that.
Took a year to trust each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You seen him shoot?
Yeah. Can I trust this guy in the woods? I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Wear a lot of orange.
Right.
But no, it was hunting with Jason and his dad, and just really hanging out with them, talking around campfires and talking about revolvers, and it's kind of like, well, okay, I'm still kind of green to not really the industry, but to hunting and big bore revolvers. Like, oh, what is this all about?
This particular category.
Right.
Oh, dude, I was like a bass going after a lure. I mean, I was hooked. I was hooked.
Yeah.
I remember the first time he came out with us. We were out there shooting our Super Blackhawks and our Bisley whatevers, and I remember he had a 6-inch stainless Rossi 357 Magnum.
Yeah, 371.
And I remember he came out there, he was like, he was all proud. He pulled out his case and everything, and it was like, okay, that's cool. And then we're booming away with big 45 Colts and stuff, and then 3 months later, he's out there with his 4 5/8-inch Bisley 45 Colt.
Actually, the first one was a Vaquero.
You're right. It was a Vaquero.
It was a Vaquero that David Clements customized for me and fit a Bisley grip frame to it, but it was a standard Vaquero.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was the old style Vaquero that could handle the real heavy
larger
loads.
frames. Yeah. That's a question we get all the time, is the different frame sizes, especially in 45 Colt. That's the big one. Mm-hmm. And Ruger. So a little back history, when Ruger was still making the old model Blackhawks, which old models mean that they didn't have the transfer bar, so they worked like a Colt single action army. The firing pin would rest down on the on a cartridge.
Would rest on the firing pin.
So you pretty much had to only load 5 in those. You had to keep an empty chamber. You had the 4 clicks when you clicked the hammer, when you cocked the hammer back, and all that kind of stuff. So in 72 or 73, I forget, they went to the transfer bar system. And so that's when the new model Blackhawks came out. And then you could safely load them all the way up. You didn't have to worry about resting the hammer on an empty chamber and all that stuff. So when they went to the new model Blackhawks, all the calibers that they chambered in went to the larger 44 Magnum size frame. So pre that, on the old models, their 357s were made on a smaller mid-size Colt single-action Army size frame. The 41 Magnum, the 44 Magnum, and the 45 Colt were made on a larger Super Blackhawk size frame. little bit more strength.
Mm-hmm.
And when they went to the new model, I'd say decided as an internal thing to keep production more streamlined or whatever, they made even the 357s and the 30 carbines and all those on the larger frame. So they had one frame size instead of two. Really, the large frame was really way more than you needed on the 357 for sure.
Right.
I've got a couple of new model Blackhawks and 357 that are on a large frame, and they're big, they're heavy.
Yeah.
But I mean, you talk about brutally strong.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of steel between the chambers on those. So why the flat top thing was significant in the mid 2000s was when they made that smaller flat top commemorative gun for the 357. It was based on the smaller mid-size frame like they did back on the old models. So now you had a smaller, lighter frame that was really more ideal for stuff like 44 Special and 357
Right.
and even 45 Colt. So that's why that opened the door for a lot of these special makeups. So a lot of the questions comes is like, all right, I've got a 45 Colt flat top that's on the mid-size frame.
Right.
Can I shoot the same loads it is as I can shoot in the 45 Colt in the large size frame? And the answer is no.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
it's not as strong.
Right.
So what really kind of threw a lot of questions in there is that I think in the Hodgson's model or a 26th edition reloaded manual, they came out with Ruger only 45 Colt loads. And so what they did was they took a 45 Colt Blackhawk, which was on the large 44 Magnum size frame, and determined that it could handle up to 30,000 CUP level loads, which all of a sudden now took a 45 Colt out of the old traditional 250 grain at 900 feet per second or whatever loads, and now you could shoot 325 grain bullets at 1250, 1300, which was really outclassing even the 44 Magnum at the time. So people jumped on board on that. I know Dale and I have shot metric tons of those loads through our guns over the years, and they're really effective. They behave a little bit better than the 44 Magnum. I think they're a little more comfortable to shoot, and I think they got a little bit more punch to them. But on these smaller flat top size guns, you can't shoot those heavy, heavier loads through. You got to stick to a more traditional 250 to 280 grain bullet. You can run those at about 1,000, 1,100 if you load your powders correctly. There's a couple of factory loads. I know Buffalo Bore makes one, I think, that shoots at 255 at around 1,000 or 1,050, and it's safe. They even say in there, it's safe for all 45 Colts. But those heavy 300 grain plus loads that are running, 11, 12, 1,300 feet per second, they just don't work in the flat tops. They're too heavy.
You got to do a little
homework.
You got to do a little homework and research before you just go jamming rounds into your gun.
Right, and it causes confusion because people say
Yeah.
Ruger only loads, and like, well, I have a Ruger. But those manuals were made before there was a smaller frame Ruger. So
and another thing, I mean, when you start shooting the 310s, the 325 cast bullets, they're a lot longer. And when you're dealing with a smaller cylinder and a smaller frame,
a lot of them don't fit.
They don't fit. They're going to stick out the end of the cylinder.
Right.
And you're going to lock up your cylinder real quick whenever you try to cock it.
Yeah. So that does – it kind of – sometimes it helps. It cures itself. But there's nothing to keep somebody from shooting a lighter bullet with a ton of H110 in it and running it way over pressure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just you got to know – you got to understand what you're getting into.
Right.
And know from there. We get a lot of questions about the 44 Special and the flat top guns because they are on the smaller frame, but a 44 Special has a little bit more meat between the cylinders than a 45 Colt does because the hole's not as big. So 44 Special is a tough one because there is no Ruger only loads in the manuals.
Right.
So it's always been kind of the old loads are kind of really downloaded so you don't blow up an old triple lock or something like that from the old guns. I will say this: those 44 Special flat tops will handle a little bit more than those old guns do.
Right.
I mean, I run mine. I tell you, a load and it's actually under Sammy's spec. To me it's a sweetheart load. I load more of these, shoot more of these, so many of them. But it's a 250 grain. Hard cast bullet. I like the key style, but if you're an LBT guy, that's cool too. With 8 grains of power pistol. That load, it's under the 15,500 PSI max level for 44 Special, but it'll run about $950 or so out of a 4-inch gun and about $1,000 out of a 5.5-inch gun. That's really all you need anyways. If you need more than that, go get a 44 Magnum. I mean, that's what they're there for.
Yeah. Now, if you had to run some of the 210 hollow points, what would be an ideal load for those 44 specials?
If you're running, because remember, when you're using jacketed bullets, you get a little bit higher pressure than you do with the cast bullets because there's more friction. So those 210s, I haven't played with the lightweight stuff as much. I know I used to shoot some 220, the old Spear half jackets, the 225s. And I want to say I was loading 16 grains of 2400 with those. Okay. And they were stepping out pretty good.
That's pretty good.
But, the 210s, I haven't really messed with those as much.
I got a bunch of them. We just need to sit down and start loading some.
We can shoot those in your lever actions too.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Do you load your own?
Yeah, I load 45 Colts, 38 special.
You guys been doing that much?
I've been a lot.
Have you?
Yeah.
Are the ingredients available?
Not really. Not right now.
No.
Fortunately, I had a little bit of stock.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always helps to have a little bit set behind.
I always tell people, you go when during normal times when stuff available, go buy a box here, buy a box here, and next thing you know, you got quite a bit of it. And I will say this: usually I don't follow my own advice because usually, every time you go to a store, go buy a box of 9mm.
Yeah, you think once a paycheck, every payday I'm going to go get
go buy a box of 9mm.
Just
go buy a box of primers.
But I will say this: when it came to reloading components, I did do that, and so I would go buy, some primers here, a pound of powder there, and so I had a pretty good stockpile.
That's awesome.
So, but it keeps shooting. And let me tell you, if you're serious about getting in and wanting to shoot these guns a lot, I don't want to say you have to hand load. Yeah. But gosh, man, it makes it a lot more affordable because all these cartridges we're talking about, 45 Colt, 44 Special, 41 Magnum, 44 Magnum, they're not cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, even the inexpensive stuff is pretty expensive comparatively.
Well, then you can be kind of a victim to the market as well.
Absolutely.
When things start disappearing from the shelves, it's like, well, there goes your hobby, your recreation, or maybe, again, hunting season, whatever it may be. It's like, well, there's nothing there, so you're kind of hamstrung, I guess, by what's available.
And the good thing about hand loading, too, is you can tailor now the loads to the guns. You're not necessarily stuck because 45 Colt's a perfect example. There's either the light cowboy level stuff or the buffalo bore heavy stuff.
Right.
There ain't a whole lot in between. Mm-hmm. So you're really not maximizing a lot of the potential of some of the smaller frame guns, and you not really getting a whole lot of the large frame stuff unless you go all out. So to be able to hand load and find that sweet spot, I always, we always talk heavy loads, and, we spent most of our 20s and 30s shooting the heavy 300 grainers at 1,300 feet per second. Now, I'd say 90% of the stuff I shoot is 250 to 280 grain bullets at 1,000 feet. Yeah. And what I realized was, it pretty much, short of being in grizzly country or whatever else, it's all I really need.
There's not a whole lot walking South Louisiana that's going to stop it.
No.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
It'll punch through a hog. I've shot big hogs through both shoulders with a 250 Keith at 1,000.
Which of our single actions, our exclusives, do you guys like to take out? If you go hunting or whatever.
Definitely 45 Colt for me because that's what I load the most of. Mm-hmm. And Jason and I talking about light loads. I'll load a 310 with 9 grains universal. And it's very low recoil.
That's a mile
you guys are hardcore nerding out on me.
It's
good. This is a great education for you.
It's a sense of enjoyment.
It's like school.
Yeah. It's so enjoyable when you pick out your gun.
Yeah.
And you say, all right, I'm gonna take it somewhere. I'm gonna get a trigger job, or I'm a change the front sight. I'm a change the rear sight. I'm a customize it to a sense,
grips.
Where grips. Yeah, I'm a change the grips. Right. And do that leather. What kind of leather am I going to get?
Right.
Do I want a cross draw? Do I want a Doc Holliday rig? Do I want something that sits flat, simply rugged style, cross strong side, whatever. You're picking all that gear out. Then you start stepping into reloading. What am I going to load?
Yeah.
Do I want to go heavy? Do I want to go light? Do I want to go a LBT? Do I want to go a Keith style bullet?
Right.
And once it all comes together and you're carrying this gun in the woods, and if you have the opportunity to shoot something with it, it's just
there's the payoff.
That's the bow hunting for me.
Yeah.
I don't bow hunt. That is the bow hunting for me is doing all of that.
I would
step by
rather
step.
shoot a doe with a handgun than a 10-point with a 6.5 Creedmoor.
I mean, I've seen a lot of pictures and some videos with you, and you've got a pistol out, a revolver out, or something out, quite a bit. I mean,
yeah, that's again, it's kind of what I'm my comfort zone,
right?
I've gotten a lot where I've shot in autos a lot in the last 15 years or whatever, but when it really comes down to it, when it's time to go hunting in the woods, I almost inevitably grab a revolver.
Yeah.
Been on a double action kick lately, but it's funny. I'm kind of swinging back into single actions again. And for me, I think the 44 specials are where I'm really kind of my zone right now.
Yeah.
The two, we did in 2009, we did the flat top Blackhawks and 44 special. That was a gun that Skeeter Skelton and all these guys wanted Ruger to make back when they made the old models, one of the small frames.
Mm-hmm.
When they went to the large frame guns only and didn't make the smaller frames, it didn't make any sense because you could get a 44 Magnum.
Right.
You could just shoot 44 specials in a 44 Magnum. So having that smaller frame platform, I was so excited about that gun because I had actually had an old model 357 built into a 44 special by David Clements. And so I'd been shooting that gun for years, but it was just nice to be able to go buy a factory Ruger already done.
Sure.
It's wasn't near as expensive. You could load all 6 rounds in it. It just had a lot going for it.
Right.
And so when those came out, I kept waiting to kind of get, because they were so popular. I didn't want to get one because they were on a hard allocation, and we had all these orders for them. And I felt bad about going and getting one. And one day I went to a dealer promo up in Colorado. And Ruger, it was a Ruger promo, and Ruger had sent the Revolver production manager to that promo to help work it. And so we got, during the downtime, we're sitting there talking or whatever. And I remember he asked me, he said, "Hey, did you get one of the flat tops? It's been real popular, up here." And I said, "No, I haven't got one yet. I'm kind of waiting things cool down," which they never did.
Right,
but,
right.
And I said, "Plus, anyways, I'm kind of a Bisley guy. I like Bisleys."
Yeah.
And he goes, "We ought to just build you a Bisley." And I'm like, "You can do that?" He's like,
let's do it.
He goes, "We can build whatever you want." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
He goes, "What barrel length you want?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm stuck between a 5. We did 5.5 and 4 5/8.
Yeah.
I said, "Man, I don't. Oh gosh, man, I'm really torn." He goes, "Well, how about we just build you one each?" And I was like,
You were greasing the wheels, man. Come
"No,
on.
well, I really did. Honestly, I really
He was slow playing
I
it.
really
Yeah.
was.
Oh, really? You
Yeah,
could
check.
You
I'll
could
check.
do that?
Yeah, I paid for him.
Yeah. No. I understand.
Yeah,
I'm saying,
but so anyway, so this was in 2009 still. So they sent those 2 Bisley flat top 44 specials in, and of course, we're playing show and tell around the office and everything, and everybody's like, "Man, we gotta get Ruger to make those. We could sell those. Those would be cool." And so I shot those guns for a while, and man, were they so nice.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the modern production grade Keith number 5.
Yeah.
It was a Bisley
That's
style
cool.
adjustable sight 44 special.
Yeah.
5.5-inch barrel was the one that Keith had, and that's really, of the two, the 5.5 is the one I've really kind of grown to really love. I like my 4 5/8 ones, but I don't shoot it as much. But the 5.5 is really the sweet
cool.
spot,
That's
and
cool.
that gun is probably would be, of all the exclusive stuff that we've done, would be the one I would say is my favorite.
It's cool.
Mainly because it was kind of cool the way it all came out,
Right.
but also because it really is for people who grew up reading all the Elmer Keith stuff
Yeah.
and really saw that gun was an ideal setup. Now they can go for less than $1,000 to go have one.
What are some things we get so many requests of all kinds of stuff, but what are some things that we haven't done that maybe we could do, should do, might be in the works, or maybe some requests, some very realistic requests you've gotten that I'm sure there's probably some people that get close to what's up here and what's in your head of
well,
like, hey, that's
it's kind of a finite amount of things you can do.
sure.
And the thing about the cool thing about the way the Ruger Blackhawks work is that the grip frames, you can kind of swap them around, the barrel lengths around, a fluted, non-fluted cylinder around.
Right.
And you can create, based off of 5 or 6 part sets, you can create all these different types of.
Somewhat modular.
It really is in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so we haven't done Bisley 45 Colt flat tops yet. We haven't done Bisley 357 flat tops yet. We did them in the 44 special. So obviously those are low-hanging fruit that we could do. And part of the reason I get questions all the time. Well, how come you don't do this? How come you do that? We only get so much production time from Ruger to do these things. And when you've got more orders than you can fill on the ones you already have, it doesn't make sense to go add more to them and just dilute what we already got. So,
and I know we get a lot of fun requests, but there still is a business end to the business.
Sure.
That's where it gets tricky.
You get the guys who want, why don't you do a 3840 and a 7.5-inch Bisley with unfluid cylinder? And it's like, it's cool. And I would love to do it, but it's just not, you got to draw the line sometimes, because at the end of the day, we do have to sell these to dealers. Yeah. And a dealer's got to be willing to say, okay, I can get ammo for it, or I can, this is something that's really available.
Something unique, something different, but has that mass appeal to it, at least in a niche.
Right. It can't be so specialized that
that's what the custom guys are there for.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what they're there for. And we got to take into consideration, a lot of times I get requests for weird barrel lengths. And while, that's kind of neat, at the same time, then you run into there's no holsters available. Well,
that's funny, because you and I talked about this a week or two ago. I'm like, why are we, I'm like, I guess you just get used to it. 4 5/8, 7.5.
Rob was like, why can't where do these numbers come from?
Why can't I have a 5 3/4? Why can't I have why do I have to stick to these standards? And I know there's a lot that goes into, barrels. You've got velocity, you've got accuracy, things like that. And Jason said a big part of it is holsters and things like. But I'm like,
some standardization.
Holsters can't hold me down. If I want like a,
hey,
I want an 8.28 inch something.
You can always stitch it yourself.
Yeah, and look,
that's true. That's true.
Mike Baranti would be happy to make you a holster for it. I'm sure. But it is.
So is that? I mean, holster is one thing, but and obviously I understand like the molds and casting. Mm-hmm. You start. Servicing every millimeter of barrel length, and it
gets a little cumbersome, right? And look, I will say this: the 4 5/8. The reason why those numbers came out, the original short barrel was the 4 3/4-inch Colt, and that's because that's where the ejector rod housing came out to. So they made it flush.
Right.
It just happened to be where it came out.
Right.
Ruger did it was 4 5/8. It's a little different.
Very scientific.
Yeah, that's where it came out.
Yeah.
5 1/2 was a little bit longer. Kind of an in-betweener. It's really probably for the field, probably the best all-around for carrying around and for hunting or for shooting long range. I love the 4 5/8-inch guns just for packing around.
Right.
I have several 7.5-inch guns. I don't generally carry them that much, honestly.
Well, they're big.
They're long. They're easy to shoot. I'll tell you this. If you want to just go out and you want to bang rocks at 200 yards or something, those guns make it pretty simple. Yeah. But at that point now, I'm probably carrying it in a chest rig.
I guess over all this time now, the barrels are, it's pretty well set. You've got short, you've got medium, sort of medium, you've got long and a little longer.
And then obnoxious long.
So where do you go from there? But it was just I was just kind of curious about that.
It was a legitimate question.
They're very specific,
Right.
Well, I mean, with barrel length, when you're sitting in a deer stand, if you're carrying on the chest, you can carry a pretty long gun.
Right.
If you're carrying a cross draw, as soon as you sit on a ladder stand,
right.
You got the holster, and God forbid if the barrel sticks out past the end of the holster, you're dinging up and you're scratching up the end of your barrel.
Oh yeah.
Strong side, you got the same problem whenever you sit down. Plus, you go to sling a rifle, your hammer spur is dinging up your nice, beautiful wood stock on your number one, which
right.
I've almost done.
Yeah. Oh man! So what other projects we're getting back in the works?
Yeah. Here, so we actually got some setup info on a couple of new single actions. We will have some stainless 4 5/8 and 5 1/2-inch Bisley 44 Magnums. So we did the 3 3/4-inch, the little shorty in the Bisley model. And that gun's been super popular. I remember when we first did it, I wasn't totally sold on that it was going to be great, but man, that one's been a home run.
Yeah.
And a lot of common requests we get is that's great, but I want something a little bit longer, just easier to shoot. And so it finally just worked out, and I decided this was probably the best time to do 44 Magnum because of the ammo situation.
Right.
It's just going to be easier to get ammo for a 44 Magnum.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about frame sizes. It's all the large frame. It's pretty standard. So those hopefully will be coming out by the end of the year.
It's very considerate and exclusive that you can maybe find ammo.
You can maybe find ammo for, yeah. And you can always shoot 44 special through it, so you don't have to just shoot 44 Magnum through it. But it's funny. I will say this: as I've gotten a little bit older and a little more, you get to where you got so much stuff going on. I have kind of come back down to trying to standardize into a little more simplicity.
Right.
And if I did have to do it all over again, I probably just would have stuck with 357 and 44 Magnum.
Yeah.
Because it just makes it simple.
Right.
I love the 45 Colt. I mean, sentimentally, it's probably my favorite.
Right.
I will say the 44 Special is right there, though.
Yeah, yeah.
And they do a lot of the same things very similarly.
You talk more about that gun, I think, than any other
gun.
I mean,
I just love them, man. The
Yeah.
44 Special is so easy to shoot. And it burns me up when I rip it.
And that GP 100 is fine.
Oh, yeah, I love that gun. But, you get to people, a 44 Special, that's dumb. You should buy a 44 Magnum. I'm like...
Yeah,
you're missing the point.
You're missing the point. The 44 Special does 99% of everything you want to do with it.
So what's the difference between the two for anyone listening that maybe on the fence?
The 44 Special came out first.
Okay.
So it came out in 1907, and the 44 Special, everything is basically the same except the case is a little bit longer on the Magnum. So I'm talking about Elmer Keith again. Elmer Keith, he originally back in the early 1900s, probably 1920s, he was trying to figure out how to make a more powerful 6-gun. He was a 6-gun shooter. Mm-hmm. He wanted something. At the time, the 45 Colt was really king, but the 45 Colt was pretty much limited to 250 grain conical bullets, rolling at around 850 to 900 feet per second, which will do the job, but it's not the horsepower that we know today.
Yeah.
You got to remember, this is pre-357 Magnum even. 357 Magnum didn't come out till 1935. So in 1907, the 44 Special comes out. And so Keith had been playing with the 45 Colt. He actually blew one up. I think it was on the 4th of July. I think it's the story. Remember the story.
Fitting.
But, and so he went to the 44 Special because it had more meat between the charge holes. So in really the weak point in a revolver is the cylinder. So when you look and you see the 6 holes,
so you're looking at the thickness between
the chambers.
It's the sidewalls between.
That gives you a lot of your strength.
Right.
And so he looked at the 44 Special and said, "Hey, it's got more metal there. It should handle more pressure."
Yeah.
And so that's where the old famous Keith load came about. It was he designed the semi-wide cutter Keith style bullet, and then he made the famous 2400 powder. Originally in balloon head cases, it was 18.5 grains. When balloon head cases went away and he went to solid head cases, he dropped it down to 17.5 grains, and it ran that 250 grain bullet at approximately 1,200 feet per second.
Yeah.
And Keith pretty much lived and died by that load for quite some time. He had been trying to get the manufacturers to build that heavy 44 Special load.
Right.
But they were nervous about all the old 44 Special guns and it not holding up.
Right.
So they came out and decided to do, we'll make a 44 Magnum. And so they lengthened the 44 Special case slightly. And instead of giving him 250 grain bullet at 1,200 like he wanted, it actually came out as a 250 grain bullet around 1,400. So it was even more than he expected. So he gets the 44 Magnum, and that's he's synonymous with that with a 4-inch Smith & Wesson Model 29 with the 44 Magnum loadings. So really, he in a lot of ways inspired a lot of the stuff that came about. He had Dick Casole working around the 45 Colt in the 50s, and then later developed the 454 Casole. You had John Linebaugh messing with the 500 line balls and the 470. So there was a lot of fly by seat of your pants back then, and those guys really revolutionized big bore handgunning as we know it.
It's funny. It's like music. You've got these epic, classic rock bands and things that have birthed, these generations of music, and it's the same in this industry.
It really is.
You start attaching these cartridge names, and you forget there's humans attached to them. Like
there was somebody who was tying a string to a trigger and hiding behind a tree when he pulled it because he didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
These guys didn't have the internet and all this stuff. I mean, a lot of this was just really just testing and
writing everything down on a notepad.
And they didn't have the pressure testing equipment
Right.
that we have now. That's one thing you hear all the time. Oh, the hand load manuals, the lawyers got in there and weakened all the loading data.
Right.
No, they just got better pressure testing equipment.
Yeah.
And they're like going, you know what? That was actually running a little hot back then. And so they had to taper things down. So,
today we're able to inject that technology into
Right.
development, which, you can push the limit,
Exactly.
on what we're doing now. That's why ammo is so much more, potent,
right.
Than it used to be.
Well, and the powders have changed.
Yeah.
Back when Keith was messing around with the 44 Special and the 45 Colt, none of these powders that we have today that we use to get these Magnum velocities existed. He was using DuPont number 80, which was a very crude powder.
Yeah.
And then when 2400 finally came out, I mean, it was like a godsend to him. All of a sudden now they had a powder that had a slow enough burning rate to actually do some good.
Right.
And now we've got stuff like H110 and
little gun and
300 MP and all this kind of stuff that's creating all this crazy velocities with very low pressures and predictable pressures.
Yeah.
And so that really changed the game a lot. And so the powders were always a lot of the hang up to a lot of this development. And so who knows where we're going to go in the future. It could get better. And we're also changing the guns too. Now the guns are getting lighter. The materials are, you got Smith & Wesson 44 Magnums that weigh 26 ounces now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not fun to shoot,
Right.
but you can carry them all day. You had one.
And, unless you're dumb like me and actually shoot it and then buy it.
Yeah,
and
right.
Normally it's the other way
Yeah,
around.
right,
Yeah. I had more enjoyment handing it to people and say, hey, why don't you go shoot a couple rounds?
Yeah,
and I kept the real light 44 Magnums. I'm
Yeah.
talking like the 180 UMCs that were just blasting out of that 4-inch
I
barrel.
hate that load.
Yeah.
It took you picture and smashed your hand like a ball peen hammer at the same time.
Yeah, I found that the mountain guns are about as light as I like to go.
Yeah.
In the Smiths, but
Do you think this sort of hiatus on a lot of these single actions, just due to the last, year and a half, here we are, we're in early August 21, and do you think that's kind of hampered some of the enthusiasm or slowed it down, or do you think it's maybe done the opposite, where people are now like,
I think what it'll do,
get these things in production.
I think what it'll do is it'll get somebody maybe off the fence who'd been putting it off.
Yeah.
It's like, dang it,
if it shows up now, buy it.
I don't want to run the risk of them saying, what, single actions are not important. Let's stop making them.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll get people back to maybe who were just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it's fun, and don't be intimidated about the cost of ammo. Get some basic reload equipment. I didn't start with a Dillon 550 and all the automated stuff. I started with a Lyman, or no, I'm sorry, a Lee hand press. And I remember I was just got married and we were sitting in our little rent house and I'm sitting there.
You were the guy behind the tree pulling the string on the your first hand.
Well, I mean, we were just basic hand tools. And we'd sit there and watch TV, and I would sit there and prime and decap brass.
Yeah, I still haven't upgraded.
That's how you swoon the wife into.
Oh yeah. It was all over after she saw me doing that.
We're gonna load up some bullets tonight, baby.
But you know what? It wasn't fast, but it got the job done, and it allowed me to shoot those guns. Yeah. You can get a basic single stage reloading press, pretty inexpensive now. Yeah. There's a lot of used equipment out there if you look around, and don't be intimidated. That and a set of dies and a scale, and you can do a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't you don't have to crank out 500 rounds in an hour to be effective with that stuff.
Yeah.
But it allow you to tailor the loads to what you're going to do, and tailor the loads to your gun, because.
So that seems wildly more important in talking about single actions specifically, is kind of loading your own and being able to really kind of dial in.
Well, keep in mind, with a revolver, you have 6 chambers.
Sure.
So each chamber is really its own entity.
Yeah.
And making sure that all those throats are uniform and everything else. You get one that's out of whack, all of a sudden you're shooting a great 5-shot group and it throws that 6th one. Well, maybe that one chamber is not dimensionally the same as the others. And I'm
thinking, like I'm saying, as opposed to having a Glock 19, you just go grab some 9mm off the shelf and start shooting.
Right.
You don't think about loading your own ammo, other than maybe possibly for just money's sake. But
sure,
you load your own magazine. That's pretty much the extent of it.
Yeah, but exactly. But in this category, it seems a lot more fun, and I mean, I guess it adds a lot of depth to the hobby as well.
It's more of a devotion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way you hold a single action revolver will determine its point of impact a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's funny. A good friend of ours, Greg Ferris, local lawman legend around Baton Rouge.
Lawman.
But he's a big big single action shooter, and we shoot a lot together.
Yeah.
And we can pick up the same gun, and when he shoots it, it'll shoot 4 inches high, and for me it'll shoot dead on, or vice versa. And it's because of the way we hold the gun.
Mm-hmm. I hope he didn't hear that.
Yeah. Now, no, he shot a better group than I did, I can promise you. But now, on an auto pistol, you take a Glock 19, you don't get a lot of that variation because there's not a lot of muzzle rise.
Right.
But you got to remember, with a revolver, especially a single action, there's a lot of leverage going on up there. There's a lot of weight up front, and the way if you hold the gun fairly light, it's going to recoil faster. So that gun's going to probably shoot higher because that barrel's coming quicker. If you're locked down real tight and you got a high hold on it, it's probably going to shoot a little lower because that bullet's not rising as much.
Right.
So there is a lot of technique. There's a lot of, if you wanted, the guys who I know who really shoot those guns well, it's consistency. It's holding the gun the same way. Just wearing gloves versus non-wearing gloves can have a different point of impact.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that are fun to learn.
Yeah.
If you're going to get into single actions, the best thing you can do is go buy a Ruger single 6.
Yeah.
Get you a 22 and go learn how to run that gun.
Right.
And then work your way up. Go get you a flat top and 357 Magnum.
Yeah.
Because guess what? We make a convertible model that comes with a 9mm cylinder.
Yep.
You can shoot 357s, you can shoot 38 specials or 9mm through it.
Right.
And then work your way up to a 44 Magnum or a 45 Colt or whatever else. That's probably the best way to learn. Going off and buying a 480 Ruger first,
right,
and then wondering why you can't hit anything is probably not the best way to do it.
That's definitely not the best way.
Yeah,
just simply recoil wise. Some people are recoil sensitive.
Yeah,
and you will feel the recoil on some of these heavy single actions.
Sure. Oh yeah,
you definitely will. And circling back to
that was one of my first experiences with the revolver. I know we threatened to show the video, but my trembling hands. I'm like, I mean, I was so sweaty. But that was that was the biggest revolver I had shot at the time for sure. But
it's one of the biggest made.
It tagged my wrists a little bit. I didn't. I could handle the recoil, but it actually hit me.
The good thing was is that your anticipation was going to be so bad.
Yeah.
That even though it was moderately bad, it wasn't bad at all compared to your expectations.
I'm just like, don't hit me in the forehead or the busting my nose. I'm like,
it happens.
Don't be that guy. I know.
It does.
That's what. So there's just a lot going through your head shooting a gun like that. But
exactly. But like I was saying, there's so many new first-time gun buyers out there in the country right now. And how many of those people, because of the last year, what we all went through, when lockdowns, that people were getting outdoors.
Yeah.
You couldn't find boats. You couldn't find four-wheelers.
Sure.
You couldn't find UTVs.
Still can't.
Yeah. Still,
you're still struggling trying to come up with some of those to manufacture. But how many of those people have joined first-time hunting leases?
Yeah.
And are looking for a good woods gun.
Right.
And personally, I prefer a revolver to carry in the woods than an auto.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really do. If I get a pig that's barreling down on me, I want to make sure if it goes snap and nothing happens, I can simply cock the hammer or squeeze the trigger again. It's going. I don't have to rack a slide.
Right.
And it's going to be there.
Yeah.
But a lot of those people, I think, is going to have their vision on a good woods carry gun. And I think our single action sales, especially with new exclusives coming out, I think they're going to be strong.
Would you guys recommend to a new buyer, someone new to, Lipsey's exclusive revolver, a single action or a double action? I mean, is there...
It depends on what they want to do with it.
I know it's a matter of preference.
Single actions are a little...
you talk about getting out of a bind, like with a hog or something. It seems like maybe a double action might be a little better
woods
solution.
defense gun, I would say a double action is probably what
Right.
And it's a crossover thing. You can use it for other things.
Sure.
I mean, single action, guys use them for self-defense all the time and carry them.
Right.
I'm probably not. I got other guns. I don't need to use that one but if it's all I had, I feel like I could handle it.
Yeah.
But single actions for me are more for when you want to be able to maybe hunt with a revolver too.
Right.
Mainly because you're going to probably cock it. And the odds of you shooting double action at a game animal are probably pretty slim.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you can or you shouldn't, but some people like him shoot better double action than single action.
I do.
Yeah.
But I personally, if you're going to cock the gun anyways, to me a single action harnesses the bigger calibers better.
Yeah.
They're more comfortable to shoot. I'd rather shoot a Bisley 44 Magnum than a Smith 29 44 Magnum.
And the recoil is significantly different than a double action revolver versus a single action revolver.
How so?
It's weird when you're dealing with a double action revolver. The gun actually almost torques in your hand. You feel it more in your forearms, where a single action is more designed to roll.
Yeah,
you'll get a little more muzzle flip. It'll more roll in your hand than just coming straight back at you and kind of jarring you.
Right. I find it just more comfortable to shoot, and that's probably because I have more time behind them.
Yeah.
But once you learn to manipulate, and look, the best thing I can tell you, if you're going to shoot the heavy stuff, don't fight the recoil.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to hold it so light that it comes back and hits you in the forehead.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're traditionally, if you're out shooting Glock 19s and you're in your isosceles locked out stance and everything is super rigid, when you crank off a 454, it's not going to be fun.
Right.
Because everything, man, you're feeling it all the way into your shoulders.
Yeah.
If you let that gun just roll with the recoil with it, it'll be a lot more comfortable to shoot. You can shoot more of them.
That's really what I did, and it really wasn't nearly as bad as I anticipated. Like I said, it tagged my wrists a little bit. You could feel it. I mean, it rattles your bones. Especially your hands and arms. I mean, you can feel it, but yeah, it didn't fly out at my
Usually
hand,
when I'm going to go
nothing like that.
When I'm going to go tune up for a hunt or something like that, I will generally bring my single 6.
Yeah.
And just get fundamentals down. Just get out, trigger control, sight alignment, all your basics.
Right.
And shoot a couple hundred rounds through that.
Yeah.
And then usually I'll maybe shoot like my 44 special flat top Bisley.
Yeah.
These are all Bisley guns, so they all have the same, pretty much the same setup.
Yeah.
And kind of get out there with that, and then I'll start shooting my 480s and stuff like that. And because you don't want to go out to the range just to go shoot 20 rounds, because it's a big effort to go out to the range. But if you go out to take your 480 or your 454 and go try to shoot 200 rounds through it, you're going to develop bad habits.
Do you find it's like, kind of like I'm trying to think of like a batter in baseball, right? They've got the donuts you put on the bat, it makes it heavier. So you're taking practice swings. Then, you take the donut off, the bat suddenly becomes light as a feather. Do you ever practice that way? Meaning, you get a heavier caliber, like a 480 or something, and take some shots, and then dial down to maybe what you're going to take out in the woods, a 44 special or something where it's not so. Is it as far as kind of practicing or
no? I generally
or preparing. I should
kind of
say.
Practice what you're going to carry.
Yeah, I generally work my way up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you were saying like
because the thing is you're going to be fatigued after shooting the big guns.
Yeah.
And then you go shoot the light guns, and it's just it's just not as an enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
There's a gun writer Paco Kelly. If you go online, you can find a lot of his stuff on there. Really good stuff. Big handgun hunter, and Paco's a great guy. I've known him for years. He had a great, I thought, rule of thumb. You take a paper plate, or if you have a steel plate, it takes like an 8-inch steel plate.
Yeah.
And however far you can keep a whole, 5 to 6 rounds on that plate, that's your effective range that you can shoot. So if you can, consistently put all your cylinder of rounds on that plate, and it's 75 yards,
right.
And then at 85 yards it starts to fall apart. Well, 75 yards is your limit.
Right.
But the way you can really get there, in my opinion, is to start with a light rounds, and so you're getting back to fundamentals.
Yeah.
Where you're focusing on trigger control, you're focusing on your grip, you're focusing on doing everything the same.
Right.
If you start with a big gun, you're focusing on surviving it, and not all that other stuff, and you kind of lose sometimes some of the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And then but if you kind of work your way up, and then now you've got that kind of ingrained, now that's on autopilot, and then you're just focusing on the
kind of an opposite approach, really.
Well, I mean, even if you go with one of the big guns like the 454s, shoot 45 Colts out of it. I mean, I know your sights are going to be a little bit off between your maximum 454 loads versus 45 Colt, but start light. Start with those light loads. Go back to the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Get comfortable with that gun.
Yeah.
And then slowly work your way up, because you may find, you shoot a 454, a 260, screaming at 1,500, 14.
Oh, yeah, faster than that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's screaming, and you may find that you bump it up to a 350 or a 375 or even a 405. I think they make a 405 in that.
Yeah.
With going a little bit slower, it's going to be a lot more tolerable,
right?
And to
shoot.
And
which you'll also figure out over experience and maturity is that if 50, 60, 75 yards is your pretty much effective range anyways, you don't need a 300 grain bullet going 1,600 feet per second.
Right.
Especially for deer size, regular size hogs, stuff like that. Honestly, you can dial that back, make it a lot more comfortable. And even though your 45 Colt is your practice load, it's probably could be just as good to be your hunting load
It can be just
at
as
those
effective.
ranges. Where if you're especially when you're shooting cast bullets, if you're shooting a 300 grain cast bullet at 1,000 feet per second and it's punching both shoulders and exiting, or you shoot one at 1,400 feet per second and it's punching both shoulders and exiting, at what point all you really have done is just increase your recoil.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's a little flatter shooting, but if you're only shooting out to 50, 60 yards anyways, it doesn't matter. So, I have now backed off on a lot of those things and slowed things down, and it just makes for a better. You'll shoot more. You'll shoot better.
I'll tell you what, guys. That's we covered a lot of ground today. That's fun. I feel smarter.
It's a fun topic.
Better looking.
It really is. And
yeah.
Jason and I will sit around the campsite, campfire, and we just sit out there and talk about different scenarios.
Well, listen.
Go on and on.
I'll tell you, we'll wrap this one up. Maybe we'll do. This might be a part 1, part 2.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe a part 3. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. We may continue this. I know it's a popular topic among fans of Lipsey's and Lipsey's exclusives, especially. We've got such an incredible array of single action revolvers, all kinds of revolvers, not just single action. But that's a fun topic, guys. It's a good day. So I'll tell you what, you can check out all the podcasts at lipseysguns.com or our YouTube channel. You can find us on all the socials at Lipsey's Guns, Facebook and Instagram and all that fun stuff. And again, good job, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Rock and roll.
Till next time, aim higher.